I'll call the March 25th regular council meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. You can all please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. For proclamations and presentations, we have two tonight. We have a fair housing proclamation declaring April as Fair Housing Month. So this one is one we are obviously support, but it's also required for certain grants. If anybody would like to read it, it's available in the packet. We also have another proclamation that I'll read a little bit more of, recognizing Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, which was officially set up by President Ronald Reagan in 1987. For this month of March 2025, we want to specifically recognize the Talent Commission on People with Disabilities for all the good work that they've been doing. I think that's a great success story up in our town over the past 3 or 4 years now that it's been set up. So definitely want to recognize that. With that, we'll go to item 5, which is public petitions, communications, and public participation. On any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council, I will note that there is a 2-minute time limit for those who would like to speak. So that will go to the room first, and then we'll go online. George?
Let me start off briefly. George Aldrich, Fishing Game Road. And just to point out that the numbers that are being thrown around, I don't quite reflect that people don't seem to realize all the seniors that are in this town. Everybody thinks we got 2.5%, but my insurance, the Medicaid, and everything else takes out was like 2.45. I got $1.90 raise. So if your budget goes up above 0% in the whole compared to last year, which I was in a hole compared to the year before, and so on. Just to know, you know that you also represent all the people in this town, just not the school. So, with that said, I don't know if the people are going to realize, I don't know if you're making it well enough known that if we adopt this 2.99% budget, that's not what the taxpayers are really going to pay, because of the difference in home values going up much higher than residential versus commercial. So commercial is probably going to get a 2% bump, and we're going to get a 3.5 or 4% bump. So those numbers don't really reflect. So I will, in all honesty, do my best to let people know, and hopefully we can get it down to a decent, realistic number, even though it will put me and most people like me in a bigger deficit. Thank you.
Thank you, George. We go online. Is there anyone online who would like to speak? Go back to the room.
Counterpoint. Dennis Deacon, 689 Collins Stage Road, Des Moines. Thank you. Quickly, I'm going to suggest that in the future, maybe you can consider having 3 minutes at the front side instead of the back side, and 2 minutes at the back side, since too few people can hang around most meetings to get to the back side. But as far as discussion from last night's meeting concerning the school budget, a couple thoughts. One is, I think people sometimes forget that the driver of everyone's home value, how much it's worth, how much it appreciates, is driven pretty much by one factor, and that's your school system. And if you don't have a school system that's viewed as being worthwhile or better than worthwhile, your house values are never going to climb, and they're going to go down, and taxes are going to go up anyway. Now to the point. Last night, Ms. Buckler, you had asked about how did this 3% number come up with? I heard you ask over and over again. I interpreted your question to mean, how did you get from 7%, which represents what, about $2.5 million increase, because 3% is $1 million. How do we get from there to here? And I guess no one really asked the question, how did you get from 3 times that number, which is what the superintendent started with. So perhaps at some point, there could be a discussion around how did you come up with this 3% number other than this is the only thing that I think that can get passed, okay? Which is not a terrible thought process, but at the same time, I don't know that it really reflects any kind of discussion around how we have what we have, how we get what we need, and how we need to get to where we want to go, okay? So with that said, and the answer quite honestly was kind of like, this is the number I came up with, and I guess it's now going to be left up to the board to figure out how they get rid of the other $8 million, or 2, 3, 4 million, whatever that number is, okay? With that, I guess my final thought is, I guess I had thought that, where am I? Do I have any time left?
30 seconds.
Okay, wow, talk faster than I thought. I think, you know, in this system here, my understanding is that, or how I look at it, and I know I was raised in a much different generation and grew up through a totally different environment. But I guess what I don't understand is why the town council doesn't really feel, as I see it, much ownership in what actually happens to the school system. Okay, seriously. And that just from going to and I haven't gone to all the town board or the board meetings going back. I went to the joint session. I've been through the rest. And I just I get the feeling that everyone's looking for a number, and that number is the number, and who cares what happens? Okay, might not be right, but that's just my impression of it. And candidly, if that's the case, I don't know how any of you will ever get elected again, because you don't represent anything. Because the 2 things that town manager mentioned, they're most important really, are safety and education. Okay, and if you have nothing to do with education, which represents about 80% of the budget, why bother, right? Sorry, but thank you very much for this. Thanks.
Okay, we'll go online. Go back to the room one more time. Back online again, last time. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public hearing items, of which we have none, which brings us to item 7A, reports of boards and committees responsible to the council. We'll go the Firehouse Committee first. This is Colleen's not here, but Larry has a.
We have not had a meeting since I started. The meeting was canceled because we're waiting for design deliverable documents from the engineering team or the architectural team.
Which one was this again?
Firehouse Subcommittee.
Yes, no.
So we're waiting for that. We, Megan, may also cancel the early April meeting depending on the status of the design documents. So we did do a walkthrough. I did participate in a walkthrough, which was really illuminating, but other than that, they're progressing, the architect is progressing.
Do you know about when we're supposed to get those documents back?
I would say in time for the May meeting.
Yeah, and keep in mind, there's some conceptual things that we might be
Yeah.
looking at too in the future here, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
In light of some of the preliminary things with the Fitch report, like, what are we looking at for this project now? I feel like there may have been some changes. Am I
So there
wrong
was
about that?
direction to the architect in the last meeting to after discussion and what came out of the Fitch report or the preliminary Fitch report to revise their scope a little bit.
Okay.
So they modified their scope for obviously 340 is done, but they modified their scope for 440, and they were authorized to proceed with that. There was a contract that was reviewed by our town attorney and with modified language in it, and that's what they're proceeding on.
Okay. So what's the scope of work at 340 now?
The revision to the scope of work was, we're no longer considering adding a bay, roof replacement is paramount,
Yeah.
doing some other code issues and upgrades, and then, reviewing and seeing where we are.
Okay. Have they touched it all up on station 140?
They have not,
Okay.
I think that we looked at 440 and the contract was primarily for 440.
in my conversations directly with the representative from Fitch, it was, we should relatively stop making any improvements to our digital stations, concentrate on a single station here in town. And with that, you saw the pivot from Chief Lytle and those folks to exit any sort of plans for 440, fix the roof, we need the roof.
Yeah.
However, they're, looking at some staffing changes and possibly overnight for ambulance or EMTs and such. We might be able to use the monies we have left over at 240 to do some temporary locations for that as well. So those are all things to be discussed, but heavy decisions, so that's where we are.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. I just was curious how we were doing and how this project was impacted. And for the record, I think we do have a full Fitch results. I think the council will need to sit through and digest it and think about how they want to implement that long term. But that's obviously a discussion that's not going to happen right away. But thank you, appreciate it. Brian, do you have any updates from EHHD or CROG?
EEHD, we're working, we have a meeting with them this week in regards to the contaminated wells. We are going to submit a letter to EPH, DEP, and maybe Consumer Protection, the commissioners of each, requesting legislative action in regards to the issue, the way water softeners are controlled or issued around the state, where our feet are being held to the fire here around water softeners. But we're addressing the symptom, not the sickness. And so obviously with the studies and reports being done, DPH agreed that the water softening issue needs to be addressed at a state level. They asked us, we agreed that we'll write a letter that should come from our health director, which is Eastern Highlands, and we're going to have, I think, a meeting next week, and that letter should be pretty quick, as Eastern Highlands has been fantastic. No, budgeting wise, there was an increase, I believe $3,000 or so on Eastern Highlands, and that was it. And then CROG, no, they're CROG is watching. CROG is helping us with the regionalizing our animal control officers. We have weekly meetings on those.
Yeah.
And then CROG is watching what's happening under the Gold Dome and keeping us updated on all the legislative changes and potential legislative changes we're seeing to be hitting the towns hard around the state.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, I think I'm missing the committees reports, so we'll liaisons next. So with that, just go around the room. Councilor Buckland, did you have any committees?
I did, I had two. So the first one was a permanent celebration committee, which is now online, and they've been meeting in the library now. I met for the first time in the library. We're able to record on Zoom, which was a nice improvement. They had a presentation from Wreaths Across America, and there was much discussion about the upcoming Memorial Day celebration. They're in the heat of trying to plan that event. This is kind of the budget as well, so there's always they're just trying to find ways to finagle paying for everything, but they're doing a really good job. It seems like they're really on track, and with all the new members, there's a lot of new ideas on how to improve and make the event safer. Second meeting I attended, I was the town council liaison to the Board of Education. Much of the discussion from that meeting was having the use of solar to reduce energy costs. And then that was pretty much it, as far as discussions for that, like just any highlights. The next big thing up is their next meeting is tomorrow. Tomorrow they will be discussing reductions to the Board of Ed budget based on the town manager's proposed budget. So that discussion will be tomorrow night at the Board of Ed meeting. So they wanted to just stress that
it would maybe helpful or insightful for town council members to attend that meeting, just to have an idea of what types of reductions are being considered.
Thank you. Councilor Shay. We unmute Councilor Shay.
Should be co-host.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Give me a second. So the only meeting I had was the Tolland Agriculture Commission. And two things came out of that meeting. One was they've approved a new logo. So that will be displayed going forward on all their advertising and other signs and displays. And then the second thing they're looking to do is have an open house. So they want to have a farmer's open house where basically they open their house they open their farms on a particular day, and then people can go from farm to farm and get a tour of what the Tolland farms are all about. So they're looking for something in June, July timeframe. That's it.
Thank you. Councilor Moran.
Yeah, the HTC had a meeting last night. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend because we had the budget meeting last night. But they didn't have any COAs on the agenda. I think they were just talking more generally, looking ahead, kind of things that are coming up for them. But I'll obviously be at the next HTC meeting. Have to do the budget instead.
It happens. Yeah, I think I missed one for that same reason. Councilor Beatty.
The only other committee or the liaison that I am is planning and zoning, and it was canceled last night. So I have nothing else to report.
I had the Economic Development Commission that last week. The only big thing that came out of that meeting is that there was a request from that committee to see if the town manager or the chair, it's me, to engage with property owners and undeveloped but commercially valuable property. Is an idea that they floated. Brian, I don't know if they've mentioned that to you. I told them, we're kind of thick of budget season, but I'll come pick it up once that's in the rear view year. But I don't know if you have anything to
Nope.
add. Okay.
Is there a goal to doing that?
I think that the idea is that we could help essentially reach out and explore development options with owners of land like that. I guess they've that the committee itself has tried to do that with less success. And the idea is maybe if we got the town manager or the council chair involved, you might have a little bit more success. That's kind of where they left it at that.
Okay,
So we'll see how it goes.
thank you.
All right, we'll move past that item, go to item 8.1 under new business, consideration of a resolution to approve restructuring the motor vehicle tax.
Great, thank you, Chair. And with me, I have Jason Lawrence, our assessor. And you looked us here as well to help explain. There's been some changes at the state level in regards to how our motor vehicles are valued in relation into how it impacts our grand list. So Jason's no stranger to us as of late. So Jason, what do you got?
Feeling a little better today. Hopefully they can get through it all right. Okay. So you all have a packet in front of you, I believe, that was produced for you last week. Basically, I'm just gonna go through what I prepared and keep on my script here. Start off a little bit of motor vehicle history. For the last 100 years, motor vehicles have been assessed and taxed based on their market value in the state of Connecticut. With no set standards for valuation, issues arose with many towns using different methods for valuation. In the mid-90s, the state adopted legislation to clearly state that motor vehicles will be based on their average retail value, and a 70% assessment ratio will be applied. That's what your taxes are based off of. Assessors throughout the state will use the same state recommended pricing guides, NADA, to keep values uniform. This method has held true for years since until 2021, when motor vehicle values increased sharply due to the lack of inventory, causing the majority of tax bills to increase. There was significant public outcry, and it was heard by our governor. A task force was formed by assessors representatives of OPM and legislators and town leaders to arrive at alternative methods to value, ensure motor vehicles would decrease in value over time, and not see the spikes that we saw during COVID. Also in 2021, the state passed a maximum mill rate of 32.46 for motor vehicles and reimbursed towns for the tax loss due to the cap. I have some numbers that I came up with that aren't part of your packet from Yulitza. I don't know if in 21, Grand List 21, our mill rate was 36.58 and the state reimbursed 697,854 the following fiscal year. In 22, our mill rate was 37.33 and the following fiscal year, the state reimbursed 804,079. And in 23, our mill rate is 37.77. The following fiscal year, the state reimbursed or will reimburse 984,229. And for the 24 grand list, obviously we'll drop below that cap, so that funding will disappear. In 2022, during the last minute legislation, a bill was passed to change the current methodology and exempt residential used utility trailers and require businesses to declare their trucks, trailers, and personal property on their declaration. Due to the timing of the legislation and the lack of clarity in the bill was delayed for the 23 grand list with the intent of amending it for the 24 list. The revised legislation was passed and assessors would start using the new methodology for pricing vehicles for the 24 grand list this year. The new method is MSRP, or manufacturer's suggested retail price less depreciation. The state recommended a 20-year depreciation table starting at 20% in year one and adding 5% through the first 14 years. The last 5 years remaining at 15% good or 85% depreciated, with no assessment lower than 500 at the 20-year mark. In an emergency legislative session, the schedule was changed and revised to start at 15% or 85% good in year one. This bill passed and the assessors adopted the revised schedule. The reason for that is our working group found that it was way too steep of a depreciation right off the bat, and most lists, just working through some practice tests, were coming in really low. The assessors alerted municipal officials and kind of fell on some deaf ears at first, but then as grant lists started to be finalized, they saw significant decreases across the state. And what that meant was, because not all towns were in revaluations, it was a negative list and mill rates were going up. In another emergency certificate of need, Governor Lamont revised the schedule once more to 90% good in year one or 10% depreciation, followed by 5% annual increments through the first 14 years. The last 5 years remaining at 20% good or 80% depreciation, with no assessment lower than 500 at the 20-year mark. So same, just adding another 5% across the board. So now that's what the governor's proposed. And he's given the towns the ability to adopt this schedule as a not really as an ordinance, as a local option, and amend their 24 grand list with the updated values. So right now what we're at is the 85% depreciation mark, with a max at what is it, 15%. I ran the numbers roughly, and it would be roughly an 15%, 15 million, estimated increase in the motor vehicle list. So instead of the list going down, as you'll see, I'm going to take this here. It was 10.8% going down. It would only be like 2.2% decrease. Packet, do you have a packet? One of the pages you'll have Oh, you have the depreciation schedule?
Yeah.
So you can see what they recommended. So the assessors group has started a poll to see how many towns were actually adopting this schedule. And there it is, yep. Yeah, so the change from the normal list, the way I filed it was down 10.82%. And with the revision of 15 million, it would be down 2.24%. Which would obviously add to the grand list total, which would change everything as far as generating a mill rate and basing the numbers off of the proposed budget. In the poll that was conducted, there was 117 towns that responded. 67 towns will be adopting this. 8 of those are revale towns. 33 towns were not going to adopt it. 8 of those were revale towns. And then 17 towns have yet to vote, which was 3 of those were revale towns, us being one. Just to know, so you know where we stand. I took that data and did some examples, which aren't part of your packet, but I'll hand them out to you guys so you can kind of see what the result is. What this shows is a typical taxpayer who owns a home valued at 430,000 appraised value, which was a 48% increase over their last value from last year, or 2019's number, who has 3 vehicles. The columns represent their values from 2023 with the mill rate that was in place, and then their tax. The 24 number represents what their new value would be, MSRP less depreciation with the proposed 28-26 mill rate, and the tax and the difference. You can see that an older vehicle actually has an increased tax bill, and the newer vehicles go down in taxes. That has to do with applying percentages to lower numbers, you end up with a different result. But you can see that the tax bill on the real estate goes up as well, but not as significant based on the difference on the motor vehicles. That's with that of the current grand list the way it sits. The bottom example is the same example, just with the revised values and the revised mill rate, estimated mill rate. I don't know if that was still the same number that we started to work with that to see what that 15 million would do to the proposed budget. And it was in that area, 2803. So the resulting tax is next to that, and the difference is next to that. So you can see that with revising that the depreciation schedule, you're going to get a lower mill rate. You're going to have a net result of actually $17 less or $10 less than this example. It's not going to be the same for everybody. Everybody's got a different amount of cars, different values on their homes. But this is just one example of so you can kind of see how it would work. Also in the packet are just some of the background on the House Bill 7067 and what our governor passed, and just to give you what was in the wording. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions from counselors? Yeah.
So the 2 examples that you're showing us here in your handout, the revised depreciation and mill rate estimated 28.03. So I assume this is still a little bit of a work in progress?
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Okay.
A lot of, yeah, 15 million was basically going into the grand list, backing into all the values.
Yeah.
Adding back 5% onto most vehicles, not all vehicles.
Yeah.
Were valued that way. Campers heavy machinery is valued differently, so I have to manually price those.
Yeah.
So I went and did that a week and a half ago or so to determine
Okay,
what
so
this number
so
would be.
we're in a range
Yeah,
here,
we're
but it's
some-
not
yep.
set yet.
Yep.
Okay, and I just, so is it fair to also say, like, this isn't an influx of revenue from another source, this is simply changing where the revenue is coming more from motor vehicles than it was previously.
Yeah,
Okay.
so these bills, as you can, when you compare one year to the next, you can see that the majority of them were gonna go down based on this new methodology.
Right,
Because of this schedule, it would lessen the drop.
Yep.
And what was adopted by state statute with this depreciation schedule will go into effect next year, no matter what.
okay,
So we can either adopt it this year and take half of it, so we'll get 5% more this year, or next year, people's motor vehicle bills actually go up. Because that you're gonna now adopt the higher schedule next year. So you'll get the 10%, so to speak, reduction this year, but next year it'll be a 5% bump. Because it's already in the works effective for 10/1/25.
thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Moran?
I just want to follow up on one, sort of the procedural question, which I think you were getting to, so, because I don't recall like us ever having to like have this discussion to like set this depreciation schedule on that. Is it because it's set by state statute generally, it's just that this year it was, the state had to kind of modify things several times in order to get it right, and that's why we're here. So you're saying like next year, we're gonna have to adopt this by state law. It's just this year we have to make that decision because of sort of the changes.
Yeah, so many towns were affected, and, weren't happy about the result of this, but, they passed the bill 2 years ago. And the numbers have been thrown out there that they've been trying to eliminate motor vehicle taxes forever. And, it seems like for me, and this, in an effort to do that, there's a shift that happens. If you're gonna still have the same budget, you have to still get the same dollars, which means, it's on the backs of everybody else. So, this essentially will lower the mill rate across the board, which would lower it for personal property, real estate, motor vehicles as well. So kind of, you're increasing, the overall grand list, and it's kind of shifting a little bit more to the people that don't own real estate, really, because it's for people that are just owning vehicles and, they don't, maybe they pay it through rent, to their landlords if they're renting something, but, for the most part, this is more on the backs of the vehicles. So it's an increase for everybody who owns a car, but it's a lesser of a decrease, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was gonna ask, I hadn't thought about it that way, because ultimately, we're still, I think, sort of primarily spent, residents are still going to be paying sort of this aggregate amount of money, and it's sort of like how it's being calculated, whether it's, based on a higher mill rate on your property, or sort of doing it, this way where you end up paying a little bit more in motor vehicle taxes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors with questions? I guess I'll go like, Councilor Moran's point, we're basically, we're just cutting up the pie a little bit differently. Which I think has been the math that we've seen for property, real estate is pretty brutal with the way that the proportions have worked out with the revaluation, so. But I kind of see this, it kind of helps alleviate that a little. I mean, it's not going to change it back how it was, but it does alleviate it a little bit. But to everybody's point, the total tax bill isn't gonna change all that much. Maybe a little bit here and there, but it's gonna be the same in the big picture. And then also to Jason's point, you don't really have choice. And then in the long run, like if we don't do it this year, we have to do it next year. So it's probably good to just change it this year. Get it over with. Any other questions from councilors up on this item? Great,
Thank you for this is really helpful.
Yeah.
no, this was.
This is super helpful.
We get that, good to visualize the numbers.
Yeah,
the actual impact of it. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution on page 19 of the packet.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we are hybrid tonight. We'll do a roll call vote. Councilor Buckler, Councilor Shay,
Aye.
Councilor Moran,
Aye.
Councilor Beebe.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, so that resolution passes. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for this.
Thank you. All right, move on to item 8.2, consideration of the resolution for the revised personnel policies and procedures.
Great, thank you, Chair, and with me, I have Mike Wilkinson, to entertain any questions as well as myself, obviously. As you know, currently, the town is on a 4-day week with extended hours, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then the late night where we're open is on Thursdays. Basically, the nuts and bolts of this is we'd like to move the late night to Tuesday nights to coincide with, most importantly, council meetings and other meetings as well, because we have staff, as you can see here tonight, and this is a light agenda. Staff here as well, and with between Mike, Yolita, and Sarah Beth. I'd like to move it to Tuesday nights so that we can have staff here available every council meeting, at least until 7:30, without going into any sort of overages. So that is the nuts and bolts. Mike, do you want to add anything?
No, that pretty much sums it up.
I would say that, thanks, Mike. I would say that Vernon did the same thing to coincide, and we went to the 40-hour work week a long time ago. I don't think this was a consideration of having an overlap with this, and it would just ease a lot of burdens for our staff on Tuesday nights.
Thank you. Any questions from councilors? Yeah, Councilor Moran.
Just to clarify, so the overall amount of hours that employees are working will remain unchanged, right? It's just shifting the.
Nothing changes, just shifting the late day. We will notice via email, social media, signage, and everything prior to us doing it. We've already contacted all the employees to get a feeling for that, and it was resoundingly accepted.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it seems like a pretty obvious thing to make sure that we have staff here on a council night. So it makes sense.
They've been great about coming.
Yeah, no,
They've been fantastic.
fantastic. Yep,
Sarah Beth, Yolita, obviously, and Mike every Tuesday.
yes, thank you all.
Thank you, Councilor Moran. Any other questions from councilors? Councilor Beebe.
When do you plan to implement this?
I would like next week, but Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we talked about getting it out over a couple week period just to make sure, so, in the next couple weeks, I would think would be the latest, but, anywhere between now and 2 weeks probably would be good.
I just think we need to make sure we let the public know, since we have people that will come in to pay their taxes, or, which we aren't at that point right yet, but and
That's fine.
also to the building and development office for permitting and such. We have homeowners and contractors that are used to that Thursday, so we just need to make that really public.
As I said before, we will do it via email blast, social media, and signage all around here. And if you have any other suggestions, I'm happy to take it as
Okay.
well. But that's it.
Thank you. Any other councilors with questions? Just have a quick one. So you mentioned briefly a little bit about overages and how this could help with that. So you're thinking. So the council meeting obviously is a big one, but we also have PZC on Monday and then ZBA on Thursdays. Is there a modest financial benefit to doing this, or is it kind of a wash?
Theoretically,
Yeah.
I guess, but staff is so great.
Mhm.
They come on their own and have not asked for anything when we have it on Tuesday nights as it is. I try to take care of them as best I can, but no fiscal benefit to it, no fiscal cost to it either.
Okay. That's good, and big thank you to all of our staff. There's some great staff here. I think it does make sense to move it to Tuesday. Last call for thoughts. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution on page 22 of your packet.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Counselor Buckler,
Aye.
Counselor Shay,
Aye.
Counselor Moran,
Aye.
Counselor Beebe.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, so that resolution passes unanimously. On to item 8.3.
Great, thanks, Chair. So, early on when I got here, meeting with, Dave Cochran, our planner, we started to look at all the town-owned properties around the town in the list thereof. Dave, did an excellent job. I volunteered to do it, is to, come up with an inventory, just a list of all town-owned properties. And with that, the natural, thought process is, can we get rid of any of these properties that are just stagnating, that we own that could be on our tax rolls? And so we're moving deliberately and slowly to look at moving some of these properties. And so David Corcoran is here to explain some of that tonight.
Thank you. So, yeah, the idea here is your existing policy, the way that it works is what we do is we have to offer property to abutters immediately. Once planning and zoning and town council both agree that the property is surplus and can be sold. So once it's offered to an abutter, they have the opportunity to make a reasonable offer, which has to equal the assessed value of the property. If they offer that assessed value, you have to sell it to them. If none of the abutters do, then it has to go to a sort of a public sale, at which point anybody from the public can make a reasonable offer, or if no reasonable offers are received, but I guess unreasonable offers are received, you can choose to sell to one of those bidders, whoever ultimately has the highest bidder, and there's some procedures in there for tie breaking. Now, as we get into possibly disposing of surplus property, we were looking at things like some unopened road right of way and things of that nature, which we would love to get off the town's books and perhaps sell to neighbors, get back in the tax rolls. In talking to planning and zoning, they raised a very good point that, through this current process, it's very conceivable that neither neighbor is going to offer the assessed value of whatever property that is. And it's possible that some random person from the public elsewhere might offer the assessed value. We would be obligated to sell to them, and then they, even though they're not allowed to by the zoning regulations, they drag a trailer around it or something and create a zoning enforcement headache. So the intent of this is to sort of resolve some of those issues. One, by giving you, as the council, the ability to stop the process at any point, but also to give you more flexibility to, one, first offer property to abutters, but give you the flexibility to accept quote unquote unreasonable offers if they appear to be in the best interest or if they are in support of the town's plan of conservation and development or advance the economic development potential of the town. And then also, if you don't get such an offer from an abutting property owner, give you the ability to go back out to everybody else and solicit bids from the general public as well. So basically the intent of this is to give you more flexibility while still putting some process guardrails on it to make sure that there's some objective criteria around who you sell the property to. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran. Any questions from councilors on this policy revision? With Councilor Buckler?
So does this give property owners around this property the right of first refusal? Or is it just gonna be open to everybody to begin with?
So, yeah, so it effectively still gives the abutting property owners the right of first refusal. Now, that being said, if it kind of gives you a little bit of flexibility.
Yes.
If the property is an unopened road right of way, you may be amenable to selling it to an abutting property owner who offers a lower offer than the appraised value just to get it off the books. If it's a property which maybe has some economic development potential, it gives you the flexibility to say, we'd rather hold, not sell it at this point, put it out to the general public for a higher offer. and it gives you the ability to make that determination.
So we have a couple that we're looking at now, very small, tiny pieces of property, and then a couple modest ones. We are going after the people right around there first.
Sure.
You know, do you want, you know, how can we talk into, you know, at least getting this off of our books onto theirs? And they are like oddball pieces of slices of land, like abutting someone's yard. Why sell it to somebody else? You know, you go to them. So we're trying to work in the common sense there as well. So.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other councilors or questions? Councilor Moran?
I'll just say that, generally trying to get the, town-owned property off the books, has come up at land acquisition advisory committee meetings, and I think it's a great idea, anything we can do to sort of generate even minimally more, tax revenue by getting this property off of, or getting them onto the tax rolls, I think is a good idea. And I think giving the council, sort of flexibility in how they want to approach that, seems reasonable.
Thank you. Yeah, councilors, questions?
I concur with Council Moran. We've been talking about this when I was on planning and zoning for years, so it's good to see it finally being moved forward. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, Dave did, this was entirely self-motivated by Dave, so
Yeah,
very happy.
yeah, no, thank you, Dave, and I agree, I think it's a very cool initiative to creative initiative, and I remember a few months ago, we looked at the big map with different parcels, there's quite a few of them, so it would definitely be good to look at ways to get that back on the tax rolls. Like, my question is more, once this gets approved, does this issue need to come back to the council for us to declare certain parcels surplus, or can you just take care of it on your own?
Yeah, so you'll have to declare surplus. What I'll do, I will sort of automatically send it to planning and zoning for their 824 referral as the first step. They will simultaneously do an 824 and the sort of surplus declaration, which we have in the ordinance, and then send it on to you all for the final thumbs up.
Okay,
And yeah, we should be able to get this going pretty quick after this is adopted.
okay, great, no, I think it'd be wonderful, we could get moving on it, and then, well, one other question I had was in, I think it was section K, like the very last part of that policy, it said something about how it doesn't apply to industrial park properties. Maybe this is a moot point, because I'll be honest, I don't know what, if any, properties we have in the industrial park, but
There are,
okay, so what would be the process there, or is that determined?
So the process historically has been that it kind of goes to the Economic Development Commission first. They vet the validity of the proposal, kind of work with whoever is making the proposal to come up with a sale price, and then sort of package that recommendation onto you as the council. And then you have the ability to issue a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that. I don't know about very early in the process if those parcels ever went to auction or any sort of open bid. I know the most recent couple that have sold, it's been that way, where an individual developers come propose something that makes economic development sense, and then come to you all.
Okay, the idea being that those parcels are not just tiny scraps of land and might actually be more.
they are,
Yeah.
but there's one in the industrial zone, that's worth almost nothing to anyone unless you have an excavation company.
Mhm.
We have an excavation company here in Tallinn resident, Tallinn business, that's sniffing around it, so it might work out well for all of us, and obviously, we're working with that in our purview.
Okay, but the general idea, you want a little bit more flexibility in
Yep.
that,
Exactly.
so, okay. Any other questions or comments from councilors? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the changes to the policy. I don't know if we have a page on it, but I will entertain a motion to.
So we may need to do this as a public hearing.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
So this is just discussion tonight.
Oh, okay,
We'll do,
Yeah.
Dave will get it on the agendas, it'll be tiny when we do.
okay. All right, so this is just a discussion.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I have to have a motion to set the public hearing. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we'll move to item A4, appointments to vacancies. We have two tonight, so I'll turn it over to Brian and Councilor Moran to tell us about those.
Sure. So one is the cemetery sexton position. So I think the individual who had that, did they retire, Brian? Our cemetery sexton, is that why we have the vacancy?
Resigned, went to
Resigned,
took another
okay, thank
position
you.
in another municipality.
And so Chris Kelly, who works for Public Works, is the proposed person to fill that. I think that'd be great. I think he has a lot of familiarity already with what goes on there, so I think he'd be a great fit. And then we also have an appointment from Joel Lopez for Planning and Zoning Commission. He, if you recall, was appointed as an alternate on Planning and Zoning around the time that Marilee was going to be moving over to council. We voted on him to be an alternate because at the time there wasn't technically Marilee vacancy at that point, but we wanted to ensure smooth transition. So this is just moving him from that alternate position to the regular seat that was vacated when Marilee joined us. So, and so I think Joel's great. I think the fact that he was only an alternate hopefully will make this a smooth transition.
Thank you, Councilor Moran. Councilor Shay, I know you're also on the recruit, what is it called? Vacancy
Yeah,
committee? Any thoughts?
Basically, I read the emails that came across, and Chris, as usual, handled it, and it just makes perfect sense. These two individuals, so I'm fine with it.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to appoint the individuals thus listed to the positions.
So
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Councilor Butler,
Aye.
Councilor Shay,
Aye.
Councilor Moran,
I
Councilor Beebe.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, so they are appointed. Right, moving right along, there's no old business tonight, so we'll go to item 10, report of the town manager.
Great, thanks. I'd like to provide you with an executive summary salt contamination issue as you would ask for periodically. So 4 locations, 4 Harvest Lane, 406 Buff Cap, 66 Doyle, and 81 Lakeview Heights. All need further analysis and periodic testing with Langdon, EHD, and DEEP. Letters went out to adjacent properties on Lakeview Heights trying to get water samples. 8 properties on Lakeview Heights were interested in water sampling and bromide testing and samples taken. No response from residents to results yet. So Langdon is reviewing those samples currently. That said, as I might have mentioned in this meeting before, a resident on Lakeview Heights shut off her water softener. And within a year or two, 66 Doyle, who was affected, we believe affected by that, 66 Doyle's water has improved to where they're off now, and the water is potable. So they made an improvement there. As far as the vineyards, further analysis with Langdon, EHD, and Connecticut CT Deep is ongoing. We're meeting bi-weekly with the group to discuss possible options. An update letter was sent to residents highlighting what has been done to date. No response to letter from the residents as of this point. I see some scouts in the audience, so I'd like to thank you for here. I'm assuming this is some sort of badge thing, but I recognize you all for coming, and meetings aren't usually this boring, but we'll try to spice it up a little bit for you maybe. But thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. We love the scouts here. If there's any way we can ever help, the town manager's office would love to assist the scouts, so thank you. I mentioned earlier though that Eastern Highland Health District is going to send a letter to our state agencies requesting some legislation around water softeners. Our parks garage on the DPW is moving along great. Foundation in, backfilled, we moved some fill in today. Some minor bumps in the road. Thank you to Megan Massa and Scott Lappin for their work in getting this going. As you know, Trooper Brennan, our resident state trooper, is deployed. I've met Trooper Shepard, who's basically Brennan's gone for most of the rest of the year. We wish him well there, obviously, and I've met the trooper that we have in his place, Trooper Shepard. This is just a temporary thing, but obviously he seems fantastic. I want to thank the finance office, Yulita and Jason, and their staff for the work they've been doing through our budget process. So thank you so much. I've been working closely with Dr. Willett on obtaining the certifications the town needs to have in order to hire an SRO. These are certifications through the Police Officer Standard and Training Council in Connecticut. It's a required state certification that we've discussed here that the town will pay for. we will have to hire the candidate, and so we will have the certificate, the necessary certification. It also gives us some leeway down the road to, if we ever wanted to hire constables, we could do that as well. So it's a good move to have that state certification. We need it for the SROs anyways. There's a fundraiser tomorrow for the Towland Youth Theater at do you know the name of that panini place? There's a panini place right by Olive Garden. The funds from there go directly to help our town.
Hot table.
Good job, thank you, Hot Table. Our youth theaters,
Hot table.
what is it?
Hot table.
Hot Table, hot dog. So there's that fundraiser goes, the benefit, the proceeds go to our Towland Youth Theater summer program, which is just absolutely fantastic. We're at 75 to 100 kids. It is just such a great spot for all the kids in that program. I can't speak highly enough, and I thank our Human Services for doing that. We got a letter from the state that the feds will be auditing ARPA coming up. We are in good shape. I met with Yolita and Megan Massa on that. We are well prepared for said audit and welcome it. We are looking at plans for solar at Parker Place. Actually, Access Health is. There's a lot of legal loopholes. We're working with our town attorney on those legal loopholes to see if, this is something we want to pursue further in regards to, again, solar going up on Parker Place. In a nutshell, obviously the solar company gets a chunk of the savings. Access Health gets a chunk of the savings, and the residents get a chunk of the savings too in regards to electric. But there's a lot to examine to digest. We have a meeting coming up this week. Our attorney sent an opinion on the contract and some changes that need to be made. We'll get through it. We sent out a letter to residents between the Towland Green and essentially the Papa T's Plaza as we look to have upcoming changes to that area to have a sidewalk connecting our green to our business district. As the sidewalks might affect those residents. We are going to resend out the letters. Only one resident responded and came in and met. And it was resoundingly positive, and they obviously welcomed having a sidewalk access from their house to either the green or the business district, depending on which way they go, understanding that it may have an impact on the very front of their property. So it was a good meeting. We'll send out the letter again to some of the residents that didn't respond. We have made no decisions. This is just a discussion preliminarily that we're looking at some options, discussed all the options, and basically we're notifying them well in advance so they don't say that we haven't talked about it, and we want them to have a say in the process as well. There's a hearing tomorrow in state court regarding ADA access to our Towland Green and disabled vet access to the veterans area, which is currently on hold pending a lawsuit. We look for hopefully a positive outcome in that. The Memorial Day parade planning at the PCC meeting went well. I don't know if Councilperson Buckler mentioned that we're moving the program area. Did you mention that? I heard you mention the PCC.
Yeah.
But the end of the Memorial Day parade, typically we have a programming down in the south end of Parker. Basically, we want to move it to the Towland Green. So the parade will end here, and then we'll have the programming there on the green with a little stage set up. And I think it just works out better. And I think it was unanimous PCC that they voted for that.
Absolutely, it just made sense.
Yep. We got new tabulators coming into the registrars, worked with Mike Wilkinson, worked with Brenda and April on the new tabulators, some insurance stuff to get through. They got through it just fine. And I'm open to any questions if you have.
Thank you. Any questions for our town manager? I had two, sorry.
Almost got
You bluffed me. Nice job.
Actually, Kristen's come over, Councilor Buck. I just missed that last part about the parade. So what is the new route going to be?
Same route.
Same route, yep, just the programming at the end is going to be in a more central location, which is, it made more sense to have it there. So it was unanimous, they talked it out, they drew it out on a whiteboard, there was much discussion, but they all agreed that that was a better place to have it, and I couldn't agree more.
It's not like it's on the green now?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. So we gotta like walk back up or?
I don't know if you walk.
No, no.
up, No,
No, it's right here.
yeah,
Yeah.
So it's gonna end here and you can be right there.
It
Right.
doesn't go all the way down like Snake Nest.
No, right.
Right.
And remember, getting to handicap access to where we had the programming before was problematic, and at some point, hopefully we have handicap access for our disabled veterans at the Veterans Memorial Place, but once we have that, this is This is gonna be a perfect location for the parade. And we're looking at some program changes as well to make it more of a Memorial Day parade too. So I thank the PCC for everything they're doing in regards to that. Just some real common sense stuff here happening.
Thank you. And then second question I have for you, Brian. So and I probably should ask this from your EHHD report, but for contaminated wells, said we're working with the state to see if we can get some funding. Were we also looking for some funding through DEEP to help with the issue in the Vineyards neighborhood, and we're still waiting for a response up on that?
There was a grant that Deep wanted us to pursue that we didn't, it just wouldn't fit for town. There is some funding that we're looking for from Deep to explore. Let's say you have a water softener system, and let's say your water softener system may be affecting your water or a neighbor's water. Well, we'll look to obtain some funding to capture that water, the backwash as it's called, and have it moved off the property or disposed of properly. And we're looking to, I'm pretty sure Deep is gonna fund that in a few locations.
Okay.
Where we can, see if that works. As I mentioned, on Lakeview Heights, it worked. On other
Yeah.
places in town, it's worked. Or you've shut the water softener off and the water improved quickly. So we're looking to get that Deep to pay for that, hopefully.
Is that the one where we're gonna hear back by like May?
I'm not sure when I said they're gonna hear back to, I don't wanna guess.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, okay. We're looking to double check my notes.
I forgot something.
Yeah.
Farmers Market, first one, May 4th. Thank you to everyone, Brenda Faluzzi and the Agricultural Commission, I had mentioned them earlier, for all their work in doing the Farmers Market, May 4th, look forward to it, can't wait.
A little more than a month away. Really exciting. Yeah, be nice. Nice in May. Okay.
And the theme is Cinco de Mayo.
Does that make sense?
Cool. Are we serving tequila?
That's what I was gonna say, we give them a permit to.
Loud, turn a blind eye to that.
On mezcal or something.
There we go.
Yeah.
We can break.
God knows what that means, she just sent me a text.
Okay, that's all. No other questions for Town Manager Foley? Okay, we'll move to adoption of minutes. We've got 2 sets of meeting minutes to adopt tonight. So is there a motion to adopt the meeting minutes? Do it as a set.
I have a question first before we, or do you want to make the motion and then,
Yeah.
I forget how this works. Make the motion and then I have a comment?
Yeah, or I guess I'll just wait if there's a second, then we can go to discussion.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
And if needed, we could amend the motion, but yeah,
correct, yeah.
sure, second.
I think we did that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always get this wrong, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No,
we're like halfway into it, so I'm just.
yeah.
Yeah, anyway, go ahead.
So thank you. So I'm just gonna reiterate my call for the 2025 joint budget meeting minutes. And I can amend or append the correspondences, the public correspondences that we got. I'm really sorry about the coughing. We append the public correspondences we got. I think that for a public meeting, which we actively solicit public input, questions, opinions, like a public hearing, or this where we had agenda item number 3, which you and I talked about, where we solicited questions and opinions from the public. FOIA is clear that all correspondence, verbal, electronic, and hard copy are part of the public record. And in our role, transparency is paramount. Public rights to view the communications that can be considered to influence our decisions on policy and budget are sacrosanct and should be timely and easy for the public to access. If they have to FOIA them and wait for them, that's not particularly timely. So I thus repeat my earlier request to append the minutes to include the correspondences received for 2025. That's it.
Yeah. No, I understand. So I'll just give my opinion up on that. Yeah, I respectfully disagree with the request. I understand where you're coming from. We did have Counselor Yudichak look into what the FOIA Commission says. I don't know if you've received the correspondence, but we can send it to you, and Counselor Moran, I think you have it. It's a little while ago.
Okay, I'll try.
But anyway,
No, I didn't receive that.
okay, I'll send it to you. So minutes do need to remain they are FOIA-able, they are public documents, and that's obviously something that we'll continue to do. There's not a requirement that it's attached to the packet. I'm a little worried about doing that just because of the precedent it sets. I know that it does create a little bit of additional work on paper for our staff. And additionally, I am concerned about some of our correspondence can be a little contentious and occasionally contains things that are not true. And I'm concerned about pushing that out in a publicized packet. Totally understand it's voidable, and we can't change that, but I do think there's a little difference between providing that information when no one has asked for a particular versus having it available upon request. So that's kind of where I stand with it, but again, I do understand.
So my response is that we already do this in planning and zoning,
Mhm.
where we have had extremely contentious meetings, including issues which have been addressed personally to commission members
Yep.
and previous chairs, myself included.
Mhm.
So I understand the sensitivity around it. However, I think that our feelings personally as public officials are secondary to the public's right to know. And we have been doing that on planning and zoning for the better part of 30 years. In fact, for the public hearings prior to when we had a full recording, before we had video meetings and before we had, before we had other means of transmitting this information into the record, not only did we include them in the packet, we read each one of them into the record so that they were recorded on tape. And that meant that during one of our more contentious hearings, when there were 80 correspondences, we read all 80 into the record, unpleasantness included. So I understand the personal sensitivity around this, but I still think it's a communication from the public. It's very, very clear that that's part of the public record. And because the council, because it can influence our decisions, I think that the public has a superseding right to know.
Yeah, no, yeah, understood. I think the council hasn't done that. Just be with my about, each board operates slightly different and confirm if we're doing it in a legal way. And I think my concern would be, although I understand that the PZC is operated that way, I don't know if it's necessarily beneficial, I guess, to have all of that written into the record. Because regardless of whether a resident writes it in or not, if there's issues with not being true or causing contentiousness, now that's out in the sphere and everybody has access and can see it. And we're not even adding the additional step of asking board on requests. We are advertising it out. And I don't know if that's necessarily something we want to do.
So opinion is not necessarily, opinion is opinion, right? We're not looking at this as fact finding, we're looking at it as opinion.
Yes.
So whether or not something is 100% factual doesn't actually come into play, because if you look at the state, which actually does append all of those communications to the public record, you can go online for any public hearing, you can bring them up, the people's names and addresses are there, or names and towns are there. It's heavily opinion weighted, nobody fact checks it, that's not the point of this. So it's not a fact checking exercise, it's an influence exercise. And I think that's the important point. So my, again, this is pertaining to a public hearing and or the 220 meeting, where we actively solicited public opinion, and doesn't extend to, regular meetings where we aren't soliciting opinion, where we may get random correspondences and they just come in. But we in that joint meeting, we opened it up to the floor. So everybody that asked a question or gave us their opinion, that was recorded and that was reported. But everybody that decided, I can't go to that meeting, so I'm writing to you, that wasn't reported. And that is not available to the public. So there's a disparity there, in my opinion. So that's why my request is that we make this part of our regular policy and that we amend these particular minutes.
No, I understood what the request is, and obviously, in a true public hearing, we always treat that differently, but I'm just gonna ask a procedural question because we don't typically do amendments to the minutes. You asked for a suggestion, you have a motion on the floor, would be, I think the correct thing to do would be ask if you want to amend your motion.
I think that's right.
Yeah, So I'll open up to other people if they have opinions, I just wanna make sure that.
Yeah.
We,
Yeah.
we understand
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
task
Yep.
is before us.
Yep.
We're still in discussion.
Correct, we are still in
Yeah.
discussion, yeah. If you,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
so, I hear what Marilee is saying. I think my concern, just from hearing the two of you discussing is, you know, first of all, you say, I had Colin Udashek look into this. Well, I mean, what capacity? She's a town councilor just like anyone else. And she's pretty much the one at this point gatekeeping the emails. And so my concern is there's a request for the town council to be more transparent in putting these emails out there. And you're worried about hurt feelings and weeding through the emails. And this has kind of come up time and time again on town council meetings. We should never be weeding through emails. We should never be, kind of pulling things out. We should never be playing detective. These are emails to the town council. These should be public. They should be put out there. We should be transparent. There should be no question about it. It should not be about personalities. It should not be about opinions. It should not be about hurt feelings. So, really, and this is all transparent, there are nasty emails coming at every single, I don't think there's a single person sitting in this room that is not the subject of a nasty email. We've all been there. And it stinks. Do we all like it? Absolutely not. But, maybe honestly, if we put these emails out there, it may make people think, gee, do I really want to write this in an email? Because instead of it just being ignored by town council as a nasty email, now it's going to be part of the record. Now it's going to be out there in the open. Maybe it'll prevent some of these people from writing a nasty. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, that's not our job to decide what is an acceptable email that comes into town council or not. It's just something that kind of gets put out there. And that's just the way the world works. I mean, if we don't like it, we shouldn't be sitting in this chair. This isn't about personalities. This isn't about feelings. We're here to do a job. Sometimes the job stinks, but the bottom line is these emails should be part of the record. I mean, that's how we were discussing it. They write into town council. We shouldn't have to make the constituents jump through hoops to be able to see what people are writing into us. And for the most part, aside from the couple emails that are kind of nasty or, personal, for the most part, we're getting emails about things that matter and that people might want to see and might want to see what the opinions of other people living in their town are. And that's really the bulk of our emails. So, to request, can we put these emails as part of the record? And you're like, yeah, no. It kind of feels like you're hiding something. And I just don't think that that's right. I can't see why, aside from hurt feelings, which I don't think should be taken into consideration, there's really no negative. And as far as paper goes, I mean, we're digital. I mean, for the most part, I don't know if the town thinks that we wouldn't be able to swing attaching these emails. I would find it hard to believe. So I don't think it's an unreasonable request.
I think that just to buttress that, what I was really pleased to see is when we got these correspondences for 220, it was actually the opposite of unfortunate emails. It was, the content was incredibly thoughtful on both sides. Like, there were passions on both sides of this, really thoughtful, really a lot of intelligent communication to us. And I was reading through this and I'm like, this is very thought provoking. So I think it's hugely beneficial because some of these people did a lot of research and brought up perspectives that were well considered. Even if like one person I agreed with, the other person I didn't, I was like, wow, that person has a really well considered opinion. I need to think about that. And I think that it's very beneficial for the public to see us doing that and to get the benefit also of some of the intelligent conversation that was going on. The emails that we received, I thought were 90% of them were incredibly informative to me, and well written and thoughtful and intelligent. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah, it's a possibility.
So I am sensitive to the fact that, hurtful emails get sent in to counselors. Social media can be brutal as well. And, I think the unfortunate result of that type of rhetoric is that it can dissuade good people from wanting to serve in public office. However, I do tend to agree that erring on the side of providing more information to the public is important. As Marley said, I think our personal feelings have to come second to that need to know. I guess just to put in perspective what sort of we're talking about here, as Jacob mentioned, so obviously we're talking about amending the meeting minutes for that joint budget meeting to include the email correspondence, right? And I think another point to mention, right? Like if we don't include those things, you're sort of elevating, people who have time to come to council and speak over people who, either don't want to or can't come and speak. And so I guess I want to ask a clarifying question. When we have like we'll just say like a true public hearing, is our policy already that we append email written correspondence?
Not that I've seen. Not for this committee, not for this commission.
I would have to check to see exactly what it says. I know that has been how we've operated for public hearings.
Okay,
Yeah.
Does town staff, or can I ask if either the town manager or if we have that information? Because I guess, all right, let me say this. I think that's very clear that if we have a public hearing and for example, like a proposed ordinance change, something like we've talked about tonight, that written correspondence should be included. And so I guess my question is, if we're already doing that, it seems to me that the joint meeting sort of falls within that, as far as soliciting public input. So I guess I would be in favor, especially because it seems like it fits with at least our past practices, if not our policy. Yeah, so I guess that's all I have.
I guess I see Councilor Shake has his hand up. I'll go through him in a second, but Brian or Sarah Beth, can you answer Councilor Moran's policy question?
If what happens during, you're asking what with a public hearing?
Is it in the policy that all email correspondence related to that public hearing gets attached into the packet?
I don't know that off the top of my head. You?
If town council has a public hearing and we receive correspondence pertaining to the item that is being presented for the public hearing, it has to be part of the packet and or the minutes. Now, the joint meeting that you guys are talking about is not a public hearing. It is just that, it is a joint meeting. Therefore, it does not fall under our policy of including correspondence that is in direct relation to the item being discussed. So if you want to amend that, that's fine, but that doesn't change our charge going forward. It changes it for this one meeting, but it doesn't.
Right, we're talking about amending these minutes. We're not, right, before us right now is not a policy.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but in this room, when town council has a public hearing and we get direct correspondence related to that, it's always part of,
And is that by some policy we have, like by the
Yes.
town, by town?
it's
policy?
written, yes.
Okay,
That answers your question.
it does, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'll go to Councilor Shea.
Sure. So are we just talking about attaching the correspondence to like this meeting, for example, that we've received over this past week, or is this purely public meetings that sounds like we're already including any correspondence?
I think your motion was for the.
My request was for the 2025 public meeting with a joint meeting with BOE. I'm amenable to any correspondence being attached to every meeting because that's my background on the land use boards for almost 30 years. Every piece of correspondence that comes in gets attached to a packet.
So So did Sarah Beth just indicate that that's the case? Or she said that's not a public hearing? Or that, I guess I'm a little confused. Like that was a public hearing, but it's not really a public hearing. I don't get it. What am I missing? And we're only talking about this one meeting?
Yes.
Right now, yeah.
The joint meeting between town council and board of ed is not considered a public hearing. So my understanding is, the question is, how do we address the correspondence connected to that agenda item?
Okay.
And can we make it part of the amended minutes?
Okay, I get it. So I think we overestimate the number of people who really care about these minutes and are reading them. I mean, what is it, 50 out of the 13,000 people that might actually look at these documents? Secondly, the concern I have is that, there's enough social media out there where people are blasting their opinions, they're insulting people. It's the full gamut's out on social media already. So I question what benefit we really have on the few people that write in, attaching them to this, other than maybe encouraging other people to read those that are now made public, and maybe now they're going to start to attack those meetings, those correspondences. So I question the benefit that we would actually get out of any of those things, and like how far reaching of an audience does this really hit, that it's worth the extra effort to go through all this is kind of the question I have.
I don't think that if one person, it's fundamental to the function of a democratic body. So whether it's one person or it's 1,000 people, I don't think that the reach of I don't think that's a consideration. It's available, it's to make it easy for the public to access this information that we solicited. With respect to social media, that's optional. Those of us who are on social media or not on social media can choose to pay attention to it, but this was actually correspondence submitted to the town council for our consideration.
But those correspondence are still available to anybody that wishes to request them, correct? It's not like we're hiding this. If they want to see them, they just have to write in and request it.
To FOIA them, they'd have to wait a period of time, they'd have to pay for it. And this way, just like Sarah Beth said with the public hearing, if there's correspondences, that are pertinent to our decision making, they're available on the meeting minutes so people can easily review them. Otherwise, you have to file a FOIA request, you have to pay for the copies to be made. It's an impediment.
I guess
That we've actually solicited.
I guess these documents are intended for the Board of Ed and the Town Council members to read. And if someone wishes to have things made public, they just go to social media these days. It's not like this has to get published out there with everything else. I just don't see any advantage to it.
These are not private documents. These are public documents. As soon as somebody writes into a public body, there is no expectation of privacy. The town attorney has made that clear numerous times over the last 30 years. So these are absolutely public documents, and social media has absolutely no bearing on this type of correspondence.
But again, these are documents, these people are writing in with the intentions of Board of Ed and Town Council reading them, not the entire town. They're not trying to reach out to the entire town. They're just trying to reach out to Board of Ed and Town Council.
That's absolutely false.
No,
And
I disagree.
I can
Totally disagree.
I can tell you that over the course of my tenure, for 29 plus years on planning and zoning, we've had that question put before us numerous times, and multiple town attorneys, and the law states that there is zero expectation of privacy when you write into a public body.
I'm not questioning privacy. Anybody in the public can request this information, right? That's a given. So if somebody, I don't care who it is, a 10-year-old can FOIA these documents and get that information. So I'm not saying you don't give this to the public. The public already has access to it. It's just that most of these people are writing in with the intention of they're directing their correspondence to Town Council and Board of Ed. If someone wants to read correspondence to Town Council and Board of Ed, they already have the right to do that. They already have the ability to do that. There's nothing that's taken away from there. It's just like, why create more work? What benefit is anybody getting? I mean, if people want to talk to the town as a whole, again, social media is there out there. There's thousands of
Social media is irrelevant to this
correspondence.
process. Social media is absolutely irrelevant to this process. It's not part of our official process. It's irrelevant.
I just don't see, I mean,
Guess I'm requesting at this point, we just talk about whether we're gonna amend the motion and then not belabor it further, because I don't wanna keep everybody here all night.
agreed.
So I agree with Councilor Beebe, what you're saying. I also just want to note, I do think that people have the right to know the information that we rely on to make decisions, and so that's part of it. And I think, you know, making it easier for the public to access, I think, is important. And I have no objection. I don't know how anybody else feels, you know, just as we do at in public participation, you know, needing the name, someone to list their name and address in the email, and if they don't, then, you know, maybe that doesn't get included or something, but I think making information as accessible as possible for people makes sense. But again, I think the conversation now is just, or the task before us now is just whether we're gonna amend the minutes for the joint meeting. But I think we're all in agreement, obviously, per our policy for public hearings, we're already including these. And so I guess my position is just that the joint budget meeting, because we solicited information, I would be in favor of amending it.
Just two quick things. I agree. I think we have talked about this. I don't think anyone's gonna change your opinion. Just so I want to two quick clarifying questions, or a question and a statement. As far as if a resident were to FOIA correspondence, what is the turnaround time? Are we charging them for email correspondence?
It depends. There's policy says we should, but it varies. Turnaround time is pretty quick on something like this, I'm sure. Or he has, I believe, 4 days to respond and then acknowledge that we received it and then thereafter provide it. We can do it faster than that depending on the scope of it. Mike, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up. We have to acknowledge it within 4 days. Just depends on how many other, requests we have at that time as far as how long it takes and how many documents we have to go through, particularly if it's, if it's not all readily available in one place, we have to search it. So it really depends on what the request is, but we try to get to it as soon as we can.
Thank you. And just one other thing, you touched on it, Councilor. One of my concerns is that, again, I hear what you're saying, but, it is hard to get qualified people to run. And obviously this, regardless of whether you attach the correspondence to the minutes or not, it doesn't eliminate the problem of having, toxic social media, et cetera, but whatever we can do to area legally, obviously, I think is something to consider. But with that, there's a suggested amendment to the minutes. I think where it stands now is we still have a motion on the floor to adopt all of the minutes. There is an amendment to add the correspondence to the joint meeting. Councilor Buckler made the motion.
So, go ahead.
So my question is, do you approve of the suggested change? I think if you say yes and you say yes, then we can vote on that.
I think that's right.
I think you got it.
Yeah,
I do.
okay,
And I second that.
okay, sorry. So now the motion is to, it's an amended motion to adopt, all three sets of minutes with the correspondence being attached to. So, we'll go to Councilor Butler first,
Aye.
Councilor Shay,
Nay.
okay, Councilor Moran. Aye. Councilor Beebe.
Aye.
All right, I'm a nay as well, but those minutes are adopted. All right.
Thank you.
Yep. Correspondence to council, Councilor Rudacek is not here tonight, but I'm sure she'll provide her report at the next council meeting in April. I'll move along to the chairperson's report. Don't have a report tonight. I think we set council meetings enough nowadays, so I think we're good. So that goes to communications and petitions from council persons, so I'll open up to the floor to.
I just have one quick thing. I attended the high school play of Hadestown. I think some others did as well. And it was excellent. I just wanted to shout out the high school and all of the students and the staff that put in a lot of time. They did an amazing job building a rotating stage. I think they say these types of productions cost around $25,000 and it's completely funded. Like self-funded through the organization, through fundraising, through selling tickets. It's not funded through the Board of Education's budget. So they did an excellent job on the play. So congratulations to them.
That's great. Council Shay, saw your hand go up and then went down.
Whoop.
Yes.
Yep, sorry. Can you hear me still?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. So, in light of the latest budget that's been proposed, and as well as the property tax increase, I think this is a crucial thing that I believe the council should not only consider, but act upon, and that is freezing our senior citizens' property taxes. And by doing so, I believe we solve a couple of problems. First of all, we protect our seniors. They don't have to worry about any tax increases potentially creating an undue hardship on them, being on a fixed income. They don't have to worry about selling their homes. And it no longer becomes a concern for them as to what the increases may be in our town going forward. Secondly, I believe it solves the issue that we have with this sort of divisiveness among our town, where, you know, there's people who don't want the property taxes raised, and then there's people who say, you know, money's no object. We need to fund our Board of Education. That obviously will have a louder voice, because those are the people who are going to ultimately have to shift some of the burden onto them, and justifiably so. They absorb, you know, the vast majority of our town's budget is basically people that are of the age of, you know, raising children. So these budgets could potentially pass now because more of the concern will be on them going forward, and then the seniors really don't have to worry about that anymore. So I would propose that we adopt something, whether it's a new tax credit, or we just simply we put forth a referendum and have the town vote on freezing senior citizens' property taxes. And I would say that we freeze them effective the current year budget, so that going forward, particularly this latest increase will not impact our seniors. So I don't know what steps we would need to do this, but I really think it's the right thing to do for our seniors.
Thank you, Councilor Shay. Is any other comments from councilors? Yep, Councilor Levy.
So I actually would love to see Commissioner Shea just brought up the tax credit. So that would be ordinance 60. And I would love to see us look at possibly expanding or improving upon that, because I think that that could be low hanging fruit as far as how to help seniors. And that's got a fairly, the income levels and the net worth levels there are much higher than the state levels. So we've already got that ordinance in play, so it may not be that difficult for us to expand upon it, other than to identify how it would impact the rest of the taxpayers. But I concur that I would like to look into expanding that tax credit, because I think it would help seniors a lot.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think it's an important point that's brought up. You know, we have a lot of families that struggle, or particularly older people on fixed incomes, which is property taxes are difficult. So it would be good to continue to explore that. Brian, do you remember the last time we had an update on ordinance 60? Definitely have one. I just can't remember.
You mean update?
Or I guess an agenda item discussing it.
Happy to do it. I know we made last year, we made an adjustment to bring the ordinance 60 numbers up. The year before, we made an adjustment to bring the numbers up, and I believe the year before, we redid the entire ordinance 60 with the help of Mr. Rubino and Jason, our tax assessor. So it's something that's top of mind. I will remind everybody that we have to move conservatively. If we go beyond what we budget for it, it will present a problem for us. So it's something we have to move slowly towards maxing out our ordinance 60. We are currently looking at some ways to get the word out. We believe that with this year's tax increase, we are going to come very, very close to the max that we have budgeted for mid 60. If we do it for all our seniors, that will be, look at, I got a senior in town as well. If we did it for all our seniors, there would be a very, very considerable tax impact to the rest of the residents that we would have to consider heavily. I'm not speaking for or against it, but just to understand with clarity, there would be a great financial impact to the rest of the residents.
And I think this should continue to be income tested, right? There are seniors in town that probably make double my salary. So if there are, just because you happen to be of a certain age,
No, it is.
pardon me?
Ordinance 60 is based on income.
It's based on income, I know, and there's also, included in that is a disability option also, right? Because right, so it's income, senior income or disability, so I understand what you're saying, and I agree that we would need to look at it, and I still agree to expanding it, but I'm not saying it's like just because you happen to hit a magic age, now you get your taxes frozen, because if your income is $200,000 a year, you're doing better than a lot of young families struggling with kids, so
Yeah. I
That's my
understand what you're trying to say, yep.
Yeah, to comment on that, first of all, property taxes aren't based on income, so I don't like to really have a credit that's based on income. You can have someone making $500,000 a year that's living in a $200,000 house, and you can have someone making $150,000 a year that's barely making their mortgage payments, living in a $400,000 house. The property tax assessment could care less. So I don't believe it's proper to have an income based criteria on that. And Ordinance 60, we've had that for years and years and years, and it's insignificant. It's $200,000 out of a $65 million budget. It's a joke. It doesn't help our seniors at all. It's barely scratches the surface of trying to provide assistance to them. So I don't agree that we should try to just enhance Ordinance 60 because it's going to go nowhere. I think we just have to put in and other states do have this. They don't care about your income levels. They say you're a senior citizen now, you don't have an increase in your taxes. So, let's be clear, they're not going to stop paying taxes. If you retire and you're paying $16,000 a year in property taxes, you're going to continue to pay $16,000 a year in property taxes. So they're still contributing to our town. It's not like we just wipe out their property taxes, but they're not seeing the income levels increases that a typical working person sees. As one of our residents just pointed out, his increase is like 1.9% or 1.8%, and that's not unusual for retirees. So I don't think it's proper to base it solely on income, because typically a person with a higher salary level or a higher income level, even if they retire, they're already paying a lot in property taxes. So I just think it's an unfair thing to do, because property tax, again, is not an income-based tax.
Thank you, Council Shay. I think this is it's all good discussion, although I do think for an item like this, it might be something that could be a standalone
Yep.
discussion
Agreed.
item.
Yep.
Can I just say, Council Shay, if you have any ideas or other programs that are done in other states that councilors could look at, you can send those along. We definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, I can sort of look into that. Time is of the essence here, because I'm concerned about our seniors really getting hammered with this new budget, or this new property tax valuation. They're going to see increases far beyond what their increases in income are. So I think it's something we have to seriously and rather quickly.
Thank you. Any other petitions from council persons?
Crystal mine,
All
for the
right.
record, one of these. I'm just kidding.
Okay,
Noted in the minutes.
Well, I just want to make a comment too. Those folks in those scouts that were, I don't know if they're still there, but hopefully this spruced up their meeting a little bit more.
Good little spice. All right.
Going too
Thanks.
No, this is the good stuff. This is democracy.
All right, well, that brings us to our last item, which is public listed participation with a 3-minute limit this time. I'll go to the room first. Anyone in the room like to make public comment? Anybody online? In the room?
I promise to keep it very short. Dennis Deegan, 689 Hopkins Stage Road. Primarily, my purpose for coming up now, thank you, was to apologize. I apologize, George, if I sounded insensitive before. I don't know you, I apologize, but I wasn't trying to sound insensitive. I was just trying to, I guess, express what is my passion for education in general. It is what makes the difference in everyone's life, unless you're born filthy rich. It is the difference. As well as, you know, I've spent a lot of time over the last 10 years at the high school subbing, getting to know a lot of teachers, staff, students. And candidly, I tell this to everyone I know, this town does not deserve the teachers they have in the high school, okay? They really don't deserve them. They are extremely intelligent. They are beyond dedicated. There are so many subjects that I would have loved in high school if I had some of these teachers when I was in high school. It's a fabulous, at least the high school is the only one I know, is a fabulous school system. And you should be so thankful you have what you have. You really should. It's beyond belief. And I say that primarily from being here, but also spending 3 years in St. Petersburg, and I subbed there. And God help us, you know, for lots of reasons, and just be thankful you are where you are. Beyond that, you should absolutely have an income threshold for reducing someone's taxes, even as a senior citizen, okay? To suggest otherwise, in my view, is beyond absurd, but I'm gonna keep it simple and walk away. And I do have one more. Thank you very much for having all that transparency added, okay, especially for that meeting, Council Member Beebe. I think it's, if you believe in a democratic process, small, okay, you absolutely have to include information that is passed to this council. If not only because some people don't like getting up and talking or talking online, but you have 2 minutes and 3 minutes at a time. And I know from what I hear from some of these letters that come in, people put a lot of time and effort and research into it. There's no way you can communicate everything you would want to communicate in a short session. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, we'll go online to Ms. Howard Bender. Can you unmute her?
Hi, everybody. Kate Howard Bender, 103 Goose Lane. Thank you for the transparency this evening. It is very excellent. And I think that it will help everyone, including the members of the community, to understand where the whole community sits. I'll just say, generally speaking, the budget is a budget for the whole town, including the children. So I wouldn't want to have our students get hammered with more cuts than is necessary. Concerns about inflation, I kind of heard that. Yeah, you're right. And it would be great if we had continued to invest in our school system in accordance with inflation, but we're not there. So just keeping that in mind, you know, you guys have a lot of work ahead of you. One more little thing I have to say, social media is not the appropriate place for town councilors or Board of Ed members or anyone really to be talking about the business of the town. These meetings are, and it's really exciting to me that you all were able to talk about something that matters so much to all of us, and to come through with a solution that I believe is going to help all of our residents. So yeah, thank you all. Be well.
Thank you. Right, go back to the room.
Mary Garrett, 151 Cosley Road, Holland, of course. I just have a couple comments. One is to suggest or even think that people should go to social media for any type of record keeping or to go back and review notes for something as serious as being on this council and in charge of making decisions and choices that are supposed to be based upon the good of every individual in this town, regardless of whatever side of the aisle they sit on. It's absurd, and you need to really question why anyone would even think that was adequate, like why that would come out of their mouths in the first place. Secondly, I agree that any tax cut, whether it's, you know, to the seniors, for example, it should be income based. And I'll just leave that there because I could go on with that for quite a while. And also, if you care about our senior citizens, I hope that this budget equally reflects your care for our children who will one day become senior citizens. So that's just what I want to leave with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, go back online. And go back to the room one more time. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, sir. You had your hand up.
go right ahead.
You sure?
Oh, yeah, I'm Wendy.
All right, I'll be quick. Brent Wells, 350 Old Post Road. I appreciate your servitude to the residents and all your perspectives. I want to touch upon a couple things tonight. First of all, from the comments from the town manager that we have employees here that actually are volunteering and doing town work, thank you to the town employees that are doing that. And that's coming from a resident. That's preposterous. And I'll use that word very, very strongly. That's preposterous. We have employees that are doing town functions on their own personal time. You all are tasked to make sure that that doesn't happen. So for the town manager to coordinate that and change that and put that on the payroll, that's a blessing for these people. So that was awesome. So thank you for that. The town list of properties and changing that, I have a concern. So the town charter, section 10(3), explicitly has a provision where any property value of 1% or more has to be under resolution. So that's the control of the residents. Giving any control of town-owned property to a board, I think is crazy. That's why that charter is there. So I mean, if we're talking about a list of properties that fall under that value of 1% and it falls within the charter, then I recommend it. But if we're talking about moving beyond that and beyond the established rules in the charter, remember, you guys represent the town. The town are the residents, right? Property owners here. That's what makes up this town. So just want to share my concern with that moving forward, and most certainly should be under referendum as you guys dialogue. The FOIA thing, thank you for adding that into the minutes. Freedom of Information Act is my world. I can tell you that from my personal experience, and I'd be happy to share that off channel and not be long-winded so I can get off here in my 3 minutes. But to force somebody to pay for a public document, again, I'll use the word preposterous. If there's a way to put a communication for everybody to see, like other boards and other towns do, that's a highly recommended practice, period. Because if you're paying somebody and saying, oh, well, they can request it, but the only way to request it is to pay for it, what are you hiding? That's my question as a resident. What are you hiding? Honestly, if you don't like what people are saying, do better, period. If you don't like what the residents are writing, do better. Thank you.
All right, go online. All right, go back to the room. George.
Okay, I'm old enough I can stand up hopefully. Few quick things. George Overage, Fish and Game Road. I'd like to know how we justify the school board or whoever come up with these numbers like 11% or 7%. Inflation was 2.5% this last year. Give me a break. School board should not be any higher than 2.5%, which is still gonna bankrupt people like yourself. So I find it hard to take them serious when they come up with these numbers. The school enrollment is flat, if not going down slightly. The oil, gas, electricity, anything else, is the same as what the rest of us are paying. Get over it. If your wages are too high, maybe you gave too much of a budget out. So I would like to see it capped at 2.5%, and I would like to see it distributed fairly. I want to know if we have a backup plan. They already cut for our Department of Education 90%. 90% of the people are gone. States gets 8% or more of their money from the federal government from the Department of Education. So if the states start cutting back to the towns, can the school board take a 8% cut? Probably not. So where are we gonna come up with the money? Matter of fact, by law, I think we can't go below 0%. Stop looking at the timing. Another thing is, maybe we should start with like a hiring freeze. And then we need to list with our priorities. What does the town have to have and what is nice to have? Have to have is schools, public works, fire, police. Everything else is a nice to have. So let's figure out our money, distribute it where it has to go. And then anything else, if we have to cut the rec department or anything else, then let's start there. But you're gonna have to cut the rec department by like 50% to come up with any decent money to give to the schools. Do we lay off those people so we can save school people? One of the studies showed recently that in the last 10 years, school enrollment has gone down 6% in Connecticut, and the teachers have gone down, and yet administrative costs and administrators has gone up. Why do we have more and more administrators in a school with less and less population? And we keep adding these science curriculum and math curriculum, all these people that do not teach. When are we gonna stop doing those kind of things and concentrate our money on the teachers and such? So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Go online. The last call for online. I'm gonna go to the room one more time. That's no public comment. We'll close public participation out. Brings us to our last item of the night, which is adjournment. Is there any objection to adjournment? Seeing no objection, we're adjourned at 8:55. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.